Hello, welcome to IDAGIO Live and to our workshops on the Bach cello suite. Today we will talk about the Menuets from the suite number 2. And our guest will be the one and only Peter Wispelwey. It was my dream to bring him in this series because, of course, I think his name is associated like very few others with this masterwork, and he will be with us in about 15 to 20 minutes. Today I talk to you from Berlin because activity has started a little bit again, and I want to warn that this room is very hot, and also there is a bit of echo. I will try to play in a way that fits this place, and I will once in a while take a sip of water to come through the time that we have together. So, as I said, activity has started a little bit again, and yesterday I had a concert on a modern setting, playing Haydn concerto, but immediately after the concert I put on my gut strings because I have, starting in 2 days, a recording on gut strings, and the gut strings need time to be stabilized, to be really in tune, and therefore I had to do it last night. So, but also it's going to be sort of in between things because it's gut strings, but it's not going to be 415 like it should probably be for Bach, but this is also a question I probably will have for Peter later. It's about 430, which fits the repertoire that I will be recording from starting Monday. So, and I must say it's particularly intimidating to be playing on gut strings when Peter is out there watching, because he is such at ease and so much at home on these difficult gut strings. Now back to our topics. You know, we talked about it last time, that we saw, as we started to look at the second suite, that Bach, when he explores the Allemande in the first suite and then the Allemande in the second suite, he, of course, because it's Bach, because he's so inventive, and because he wants to take us on a journey, these are not the same two Allemands. And it's exactly the same with all the movements, with the courantes, with the sarabandes. And it's the same thing here with the Menuets. The Menuets of the first suite were very much, the third beat was playing quite an important role. 1, 3, 1. In the Menuet here of the second suite, we start much more, it's much more in one, with the bass line that goes like a gain, a bit like a passacaille, like we had in the second Menuet of the first suite. Let me play it for you. So as you hear, the bass line goes, and we have much less this important third beat. That's the first thing. The two topics that I would like to talk about mainly in this, with this Menuet are the chords, which we talked about a little bit already in one of the movements of the first suite. I'm not sure anymore. That's the one thing. And then I will talk again about what I call demultiplication, which is where do you produce the sound at which place on the arm, because I received a very interesting question about this subject from David Moore, who is a double bass player of the LA Phil and a professor in LA. And together with his class, they have been following this series, because of course they play also the suites on the double bass, maybe not all of them. And he had a question about this, and I will come to it later. Now I want to talk about the chords, because if you are not a cellist yourself, you might not know that this Menuet 2 is very famous for all of us cellists for its chords, which are not easy. They don't lie very well on the cello. The first one is an extension. So already this, to start like this, is not very comfortable. And then the second bar, we have this seventh dominant chord, which forces us to make an extension between the fourth and the second finger. So all of this makes it very difficult. And then comes the question of how do you balance your chord in order to make it quite smooth. And I think a way to look at it, recently I had a very interesting conversation with a great colleague, Truls Zwane, who is a wonderful cellist and a professor in Lübeck. And he suggested his students to PIDS this beginning, you know, to get out of the stress of this somehow chords that can sound a little bit aggressive. And immediately when you play in PIDS, you wouldn't try to make the loudest chord and to make it very direct. You very naturally want to arpeggiate like a lute. Yeah, and I thought it was a very good idea and a very good image to give further, to encourage you to look at this beginning in a much more relaxed way than we tend to. So really allow yourself to arpeggiate your chords. Now, the one thing I want to come back to is that when you arpeggiate your chord, where is your pulse? What's important, we have talked again and again about this, is that the pulse is basically the first thing that you should feel before starting to play a movement of a Bach suite. You know, how does this movement groove? You know, how does this? So, and the danger with the chords is that sometimes they can take us a bit away from the pulse. They can, because if we start to, for example, if I play 2 and 2 notes, which is a way that sometimes, that used to be quite in fashion, where is your pulse? You know, if you have 2 pulses, and 2 pulses don't work. You have to have 1 pulse. So, even though I mentioned it already once, I want to show again. I think a good exercise is to play just your soprano, and then you add 1 note. Always arpeggiating and giving some curve. Don't force yourself to catch 2 notes at once. And then you add 1 more note. So, and your pulse is on the upper note. And there are some exceptions to this rule, which I will show later in the piece. And this way, so you could really think of the 2 lower notes like an upbeat. One thing that I might have mentioned it, but I want to make sure that this information comes further from Einar Belsma. One important thing that he said. He said, in Bach, don't think double stops. Don't think like that you are playing a double stop. You are not playing double stop, you are playing 2 voices, and these 2 voices have to have some kind of curve, some kind of swing, and it's actually good if they are not, if you don't play them technically speaking, absolutely at the same time. This is actually, if you play them like this at the same time, it's counterproductive. I will give an example a bit further in the piece, in the second half, where this is even more important, to separate the voices. So if we go in the second half, so my soprano is yes, and I have in my bass, yes. So the danger is that if I really play these two notes together and then I continue to play, actually what you will hear, there is a good chance that what you will hear will be whereas I think that the voicing is actually, and what will help for your voicing to be clear will be to arpeggiate, this time even a bit more than you would do usually, and to go on, before you go on to the next note, leave the F, don't stay on the F. So the F has fulfilled its role as a harmony giver, but it doesn't stay, and there is not the chance that you will, which would be, I think, misleading. There are some exceptions, about this playing always the pulse on the top of the chord, because sometimes technically it's almost impossible. I will give you an example where I have made the choice to part from this rule. It's the passage which comes later, where we have this series of fifths, and we cellists usually we are not so good friends with fifths because first of all they are physiologically not very nice, and the second one is particularly difficult because we have the fifth on the lower register and we have to catch this soprano here, so it gets really tough. So I have made the choice here to play my pulse actually on the bass, and from the next downbeat I am again on the soprano. And I confess that originally it has a technical reason, that just to be able to free the hand to play the upper C, I need to play two notes at once, and that's the reason it gives the pulse on the bass line. So at first it was for technical reasons, but I discovered that it could be a nice thing, bringing a sort of bass solo feeling, that the main voice is at this place. See how one finds explanation and good reasons to explain one's own weaknesses. Before we go and talk to Peter, I want to say a few words about the second minuet. As always, Bach plays very much on the contrast. So by having in the first minuet all this chord, we had something which is where there is a lot of verticality, where the downbeats are very important. So in the second minuet, absolutely no chords and a lot of line. So except for the last bar where he puts a fifth, but otherwise only lines, no chords, and he even pushes in a way this taste for the line in a way that helps us to almost feel that to sometimes enjoy not losing the pulse but making it very, very, very smooth. In the second half, from these plays, we have 4 bars where we have only these eighth notes that circulate, and where we almost tend to lose the parts. I also have in the second Menuet, you know, I have told about the importance for all of us, for myself for sure, to be aware of a bass line. Yes, so for example, the second Menuet, I think innerly, because it helps me to phrase. And I have this bass line, you know, I think of this bass line like if there was a friend playing this bass line, and this helps my phrasing. Now, there are a few places in the Bach suites where I find that Bach makes a melody which is very elusive in a way, and where it's very, very difficult to put an actual bass line. And this concerns here the end of the second Menuet, and if one of you out there has a solution of a bass line which is convincing, I would be very grateful, because I don't have it. So after this passage that I just mentioned before, so here it's clear, our bass note is the D sharp, and then from here, for me, the last 3 bars is clear. This is clear, but the 2 bars before are a mystery for me. If you have a solution, I would absolutely welcome it. The last thing I want to talk about is, before we talk with Peter, is this question by David Moore, this bass player from LA. So he sent this question. He said, in the episode of the first suite courante, in your video and also in your video with Pablo Ferrandes, you mentioned an approach where you assign various rhythmic values to different parts of your bow arm, starting with body movements and moving down toward the fingertips. I have heard variations of this idea presented before, but yours was a music-first approach to what can be a very technical topic. I was hoping you might have time to describe your approach in more details. So, indeed, we just talked now about bass line, which is my groove, which is the way the music is going. This is going to be, physiologically speaking, what my upper body and let's say my whole arm, that's the way they will swing. So, and so that means that everything that is within this, the shorter values that are in there, if I produce them too much with the whole arm, with the same means, I am exaggerating, obviously, nobody plays like this, but the risk is that then my music doesn't swing anymore. So what I have to do is that now if you see, when my arm goes like this, and the small notes are playing with the forearm here. And this gives me the possibility to have a broader swing and yet articulation within. And if we push this further, if I have, for example, 16th notes in this tempo, I'm still swinging like this. And the small notes are done not even anymore with the forearm, but a lot with the fingers. I hope this is a bit clearer, but I'm sure I will come back to this topic on other occasions. A very last thing. Oh yeah, it's 7:20. I need 2 minutes, and then we speak to Peter. It's about, which is also related to this, and that's why I want to talk about it now. It's that if you swing like this, if you have this whole swing by the bar, then it's much easier to have a natural inequality of the notes. So, for example, the problem is that I'm sure you have heard about it. If you want to have a line, you don't want to have equal notes within. So would make a very flat line, and you want to have you want the small note to swing. In this case, if we take it very analytically, they should come a bit later and have a swing that goes towards the next downbeat. Well, if you apply this technical means of having different way to produce the sound, it's much easier. Beginning of the first Menuet is a good example. We had a discussion about this recently with one of my students. I told him I found that that these were too exact, too much like equal eighth notes. And that was, we were missing the swing. Well, the reason was actually physiological, that he was playing this too much with the whole arm. And if you play your chord with the whole arm, and then you let swing your arm, then you get this very natural line, I would say, and inequality. Thank you very much for your patience. Now it is such an honor and thrill to welcome my dear friend Peter Wispelwey. Let me take my headphones. Hello Peter, can you hear me?
I can.
Fantastic. And I see you and I hear you. That's wonderful. Peter, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. You know, as I posted on social media that you would be the guest, many people got so excited, and the lady said from Los Angeles, she said, I will never forget when he played the Bach suite in the Disney Hall. Apparently, yeah. So she was absolutely all over the place, and same with me, and you know, you have been an inspiration for many years, so it's wonderful for me to be able to talk to you today. I have a first question, because some of the listeners have sent very interesting questions, and one of the questions was how do you renew inspiration with a work like this, which we started to play when we were kids, which we play a lot, and I want to give further this question to you, because you have been going even further in looking for different ways to that. And I think, am I right in saying that you have done 3 recordings of the whole of the suite, or even more?
No, this only 3. Yes.
Only 3, which is amazing. And so, do you have an answer for this lady who was asking about that? What do you have a trick, or is this simply that you put yourself in question every time you play them?
Well, I mean, there's still so many movements out of the 36 that I love to re-evaluate all the time. That I'm not sure that I've hit the head on the nail, or the nail on the head, so to speak. I mean, we all will be changing our minds about the 4th prelude, for instance. But also the tempo of the 2nd prelude, the tempos of the sarabands, because we doubt what we do, and we search and we never find. And sometimes in concerts you lift yourself up and it happens. And you're helped by acoustics, and your instruments, your strings stay in tune for a change, and things start going well, like you always hope they will. So it's definitely being open for inspiration, which starts in the practice room or wherever you practice, and I can't help imagining an 18th century cellist just stumbling on those manuscripts and starting to play. I mean, I just mentioned the fourth prelude. Still, the strongest inspiration for me is to stumble on that cellist that in a room is playing that piece, and I come closer and I hear him play, and I hear what he does with the harmonies, and of course I notice his tempo, and I think maybe this guy's right. But yeah, so I like to go back to the 18th century. In my imagination, that's where it starts, and then always those, like you know too well, always those gut strings will lead the way, or they block ways. They will help you to find unusual colors sometimes, and certainly new colors once in a while. So yeah, keep all the channels open, and stay yeah, be imaginative.
Have you so you have played them on both on gut strings, of course, mainly on gut strings probably, but you have played them sometimes in concert on modern as well.
The irony is that in the Bach year 2000, I had so many performances, and I was a little bit tired of traveling with two cellos, and some of the halls were, or many of the halls were were fairly big. I think the year started in Australia, and you know the halls in Australia, they're big. So the year 2000, I started playing them on steel strings, almost exclusively. And I did that for about 15 years, and it sometimes went well, and then I would have a performance on gut strings, and when that went well, it so much felt like a homecoming and a correction, and open. Yeah, this is the real thing. Even if a concert on steel strings was really blessed. And things went better than ever, then still there was this feeling, but if only I would have had the gut strings today, or it wasn't the real thing, as if with gut strings there are just more colors, and there's more speech, and it's and there's less sterility. I mean, we can play so cleanly on steel strings, but when we play gut strings, we have to embrace the imperfection sometimes, and sometimes imperfections speak to us, or they accentuate a character.
Absolutely.
Gesture.
So, yeah. You told me. You told me, is that right? That you actually started playing the cello on gut strings, right?
Yeah.
It was not.
So from day one, I played gut strings till the age maybe of 25. So for about almost 20 years, and so I did well, basically the main concertos on gut strings with orchestra. So Elgar, Dvorak, Tchaikovsky. Sans la la, it was all gut strings, and I thought that was normal. But then my repertoire extended to the Shostakovich concertos, and then I thought, well, that wouldn't be very authentic to play the Shostakovich on gut strings, and the Benjamin Britten suites written for Rostropovich. So then I broke away from Guts for well, quite a long while, but I was still recording the main repertoire on period instruments. Like the Bach suites, the Beethoven sonatas, the Brahms sonatas, the Schubert, the Vivaldi, the Haydn, and so forth.
Fabulous, so many fabulous recordings you did. You just mentioned the Beethoven. I'm absolutely fan. I listen to it a lot.
So old.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's interesting. I just want to come back 1 minute to what you said about imperfection and about the gut strings and things. It's very interesting because not talking about strings, last week I had an episode with Camille Berthaud, and she's a jazz singer, and we are talking about this, that how much in the jazz world they are less focused on perfection. They work, they practice like mad, and they prepare like it's totally crazy and everything, but then it's really about what kind of flow, what kind of dynamic, what kind of life. Exactly what you said before. You said imperfection. What did you say? Imperfection speaks.
Well, they can accentuate character and gesture and speech.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And she was saying exactly that, and that's so. And together with what Amandine Bayer said when she came to one of the first episodes, and she said to people, just try and play on gut strings, even if you don't keep it, but it will for sure bring you something. One tiny anecdote about this thing, about what the gut strings bring. I once had, I don't know if you did that one, probably Peter, you were asked to do it as well for this magazine Rondo in Berlin, once to a thing which is called Blind Gehört, where you listen to great recordings of great cellists, of many people, and you have to not only guess, but you have to, you're blind, they don't tell you.
Let me guess, you didn't recognize yourself.
No, she didn't put a recognize of myself, but only of many great colleagues. And what I remember is that there were a lot of great cellists, all were there, of course, Rostropovich, Yurma, and Heinrich Schiff, and then at once she played the beginning of the slow movement of the fifth Beethoven sonata, the slow D minor choral, in the recording of Casals. And suddenly it was not about cello anymore, it was not about style anymore, it was not about being right, it was not about being right. It was suddenly so much a soul simply just that was embracing you. I tell you, I had a moment of embarrassing moment where I started to cry. And when you don't want to cry when you're in an interview, so I had to sort of hide a little bit. But anyways, so probably that confirms what you said about
funny that you said about Casals, because I've strangely I've never been a real fan of his, but I have to respect the greatness of the guy who inspired so many people and so many audiences, and must have had an incredible stage presence, and I think what happens in the concert hall with a human being playing an arbitrary instrument, but then conveying a message which is so strong. That's what it's all about. Of course, we can all disagree with tempos and style and stuff, but it's that what you say. It's the soul. It's the human message and statement that you make.
We have talked a lot about Anner Belsma in this series.
Yeah.
I know that you studied with him for how many years?
4.
How many years? 4 years. Yeah. So, would you say also? Okay. Would you say also that he had a big influence on the way you look at Bach, or how was that for you?
I mean, he was. I did go to his concerts when I was a young teenager, or I remember my first Bach suite performed by him when I was 14, and that was revelatory and unforgettable. And then when I became a student 3 years later, I more or less decided not to play Bach for him. I still went to a few concerts with where the Bach was on the program, but I on purpose didn't play Bach directly for him because I was sitting in other lessons and heard him teach Bach, but I thought I need to figure this out myself because he was so strong. And so, I mean, his opinions were so overwhelmingly powerful and very often very valid and fantastic. But yeah, it was almost too much, and I saw some students copying him, and that was what I did not want. So it was quite a challenge, but I revere the guy. Who has sadly passed away now, but he was big. He was very unconventional, very imaginative, and just a formidable artist.
Peter, are you preparing a fourth recording for us?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know on which instrument. I'm. For years now, I thought I should do it on my Guadagnini with the steel strings and just in a nice concert hall and just a live recording, no fuss, just play. And stupidly enough, I might have done a few okay concerts where if only there would have been microphones, but maybe they would have been good. If there was a microphone, you never know. But so I'm still waiting for that occasion, and it'll happen. Mm-hmm. And number 5 too.
Yeah. So when you the past 3 recordings, so let's say particularly the second and the third, was it a decision like, did you say, oh, now I have really a different view on this particular suite, I need to record again, or is it something that you give yourself, that you say at regular intervals? You want it to be like a photography of what you are doing at that moment, and you want to,
Yeah, I think the second recording needed to be made. It was after 7 years, and I'd really traveled around with the pieces, so I'd assembled experiences and found new atmospheres and characters. And then 15 or 14 years later, it was long due to do another one, and it was a different cello, it was a different pitch. I played at 390, as you know, so I was curious about that pitch and what it would do to the character of many of the movements. And yeah, I still want to do at least 3 more.
So 3 more.
No,
wow.
4 more. It should be 7. Holy number.
What an energy! Just about the pitch, quickly. So, is it just like we don't know exactly? We don't know what was at that time, or was it 390 and we know for sure? Or...
Well, I think the suites being written in Cothen at a court. Where they want to be as French as possible, and French pitch was 390. So that's what they did. But that's what they played the gambas on, I'm sure, and yeah, that was the fashion. And so when he was back in Leipzig, or when he moved to Leipzig, it was back to, well, probably various other pitches, but certainly not necessarily 390. Anymore, because that was the chord pitch. That was when you played French overtures with your band. That was what you did. That was fashion.
Great. Thank you so much, Peter, for taking the time. It was great to see you, and I hope to see you.
Your instructions. Fantastic.
Yes. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. See you next Friday, 7 o'clock.